We have a range here.
That's right. We got some great products. We have our 6 and 20s spirits. We have our Heirloom Rye Vodka, our Avina Oat Whiskey, our Old Money Wheat Whiskey, our Triple Malt Whiskey, and our 5-grade bourbon. We're going to go through, basically we're going from lower intensity to higher intensity. That's how we like to taste.
Very nice.
To taste products. So we'll start with our Heirloom Rye Vodka. This is a vodka made from obviously rye, but this is a black seashore rye grown on Edisto Island here in South Carolina. And this is a vodka that I made because we'd first gotten this rye. This rye's got a fascinating story to it. It is from, it's got an interesting provenance. It's grown on the coast. It is a really unusual variety that exists in coastal climates. The genetics apparently come from West Africa, and this was grown as a staple in South Carolina on the coast up until the early 1900s. No one had thought they had seen it in propagation after that, and then Clemson University, through a program called the Arc of Taste, reintroduced this organism. They have a tremendous seed bank down on the coast. They propagated another seed, a seed stock, and they sent it out to a couple of farmers and said, grow this, let's see what it tastes like. No one's had it for a long time.
Yeah.
So they repropagated it, and we got the first batch of it. We obviously, this is a great rye. I mean, it's amazing. It's a peppercorn, pumpernickel, high-intensity rye.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, so I started making rye whiskey out of it,
Yeah.
which we made, sold right out. And I loved it so much, I said, what would happen if I turned this into a vodka?
Yeah.
And when it came through as a vodka, it came through like this. Really not what you expect in a vodka. It is, it's got an amazing nose to it, like caramel, like cocoa. I mean, really fascinating.
Yeah.
And when you taste it, the taste conveys as well. Caramel, cocoa, creamy on your palate. I mean, it's a vodka. It's 96% pure, but it has something to it. This is amazing stuff.
That's got a nice sweetness to it.
Yeah. And you know, obviously no sugar added, no nothing. This is just a great vodka that's been well distilled and tastes amazing. I just love this stuff to death.
So
it makes a fabulous martini.
So this is the interesting thing to me, because a vodka, I've always understood, is you want to make it as pure as you can, so that when you're mixing your cocktail, it's just alcohol being added basically to add into whatever it is that you're making. If you're making a martini, you don't want the vodka to have too much taste because you're trying to use other things to create that flavor. But this concept of maybe having a drinking vodka, or a vodka that has a flavor that enhances a cocktail, you know.
That's the objective.
Yeah.
So you can get different flavors from a vodka based on the grains that you use.
Yeah.
It so happened that when we use this extremely weird rye, it gives us rye has less sugar, so you don't see a lot of rye vodkas because it's an inefficient amount of grain required to make a lower amount of alcohol, less potential sugar, less potential alcohol.
Yeah.
So less sugar in rye than it's a corn or wheat, and so it'll give you lower volumes of alcohol per charge per run. But the alcohol that comes through is just different.
Yeah.
It's just different.
It's got a nice mouthfeel to it, which I would not expect from
right.
from a vodka.
Really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So our next product is our Avina, our oat whiskey.
I'm really interested in this one because
So it's called Avina because the genus and species of the grains that we use is Avina sativa. Avina
Okay.
sativa. And so that had a nice ring to it, so we call it Avina. And it's an oat whiskey, hull-less oats.
not the musical group.
That's right. So it's grown right here in Anderson County from a great farmer and sourced to us through the Farm Bureau. This one is really low intensity. It's like Werther's candy. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah. It's got a good nose to it. It's you don't have to bury your nose in the glass. Sometimes I get a whiskey and I'm like, am I supposed to smell this?
It's got a super sweet start and it just tapers off at the end.
Yeah.
And that's because of the shortness of the oat flavor in it, but super sweet beginning and then it just tapers off.
Get a little of that caramel, and then I get a nice little spice towards the end
Yeah.
that comes in. It's just all in the back of my tongue.
Right. Really different. Really
Yeah,
different.
that is nice.
Again, all of the products that we taste are different by design.
Yeah.
Right. We didn't want to reproduce anything that's done. And oat whiskeys are very, they're rare as hen's teeth. I haven't seen many of them.
Yeah. Well, we talked about prior to recording about how oats can be a little difficult to work with through the
Very
process.
difficult. They're the properties of the proteins that are in there are very reactive to heat. So it's just a mess when you introduce them into a kettle for distillation. All right, so our flagship product, our Old Money's my favorite. I call this a daily driver. It's a low intensity, long flavor, really easy, just wheat and malt. Just soft-boiled winter wheat and malt.
And on the oat, was that just oat and
Oat and malt, yeah.
Malt and malt? Okay. Yeah, very different.
Yeah, very different. Great expression. I love this.
I pick up a little more of the ethanol in this one, maybe on the nose at the beginning.
Now, when you nose a whiskey, you'll notice that I like to nose with my mouth open.
Yeah.
That way, it's not so concentrated on your olfactory senses, and it allows it to approximately follow through with the flavors.
It's interesting too because I just did a podcast episode about how we taste, and even when it's in your mouth and you've closed your mouth, the nasopharynx is still assisting the vapors at getting to your nose, even when it's in your mouth.
Fascinating.
So if you have a stuffy nose, you're going to taste whiskey differently than you're going to taste it. Yeah.
Yeah. I do like that. Really good. A little bit tannic, but not too tannic.
Yeah.
Nice notes to it. Very, very easy. You'll notice it's an easy drinker.
Yeah.
And you can enjoy that neat, no problem. It doesn't have too much height to it.
Yeah.
It's got a nice long flavor to it. After we consume the rest of these, we'll still taste this on our palate.
Interesting. So these two right now, I can suggest that wait on them while they're in your mouth because they unveil a little surprise flavor at the end. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Now add a cube of ice to it, and it's entirely different. It's entirely different.
But wheat whiskeys are not prevalent at all.
They're not.
So it's really interesting that you chose to go in that direction.
Just doing stuff people don't do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoop. So our triple malt whiskey, we work with a great local brewery here in Greenville called Quest, and they picked out three awesome malts, a caramel malt, a standard 6-row, and a chocolate malt.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and add those together in a barrel, and things get weird. Things get weird.
Well, I've seen a lot of distilleries starting to work with. I think Signet is Glenmorangie's chocolate malt, which is a very high dollar
Yeah.
whiskey to get. You're spending well over 3 figures on that. I love the experimentation. And you don't really have a whiskey that is just what we would consider a straight ahead bourbon. Three grain
Been done.
rye.
Been done today.
Yeah.
Really chocolate pop. Chocolate cherries, really weird. Awesome. Very different.
Yeah.
Chocolate
Being a guy that likes scotches, I like there's a familiar flavor in this one to me.
You got to see this stuff. You got to see, you do a malt mash, put it into a fermenter. There's about an 80% chance you're going to come back the next day and it's going to be huge puddles of it laying on the floor. Just very, very, very interestingly reactive when it's
Very substantial mouthfeel to it. The difference between a scotch to this would be the spiciness. This definitely
the
has
astringency, right? Astringency,
Yeah.
and that's because of where a scotch is aged. So if it's an exothermic molecule and it gets no hotter than 60 degrees Fahrenheit, it's just sitting in the barrel. Those carboxylic acids that add astringency to it are
Yeah.
getting into the charcoal, and they're not they're not being converted into esters, they're just staying in the spirit. I can see why our head of sales, April, likes it so much, because it's a rich whiskey.
It is.
It's got great mouthfeel.
Yeah.
It feels luxurious.
Yeah.
And our bourbon, our 5 grain bourbon. Yeah. This one's going to be complex. You add more grains to any product, it's going to be complex. It's going to be a big taste. Remember, think of these whiskeys as a mountain in profile. This one is going to be tall because it's a high rye bourbon, right?
Okay.
This rye, this bold rye that we're adding to it, and it's going to have wheat in it, so it's going to be nice and long. It's going to have corn in it, so it's going to add to the complex palate experience. So this is going to be nice, sweet, right? Big on your palate, right?
Yep.
And then it should have a nice buttery finish to it. A little bit of diacetyl from the rice.
And so, rice being the 5th grain, which is not something you normally see in bourbon.
Nice brownie front. Here comes the rye. Nice and big, middle, back, and then kind of gets tightened up with a little buttery finish. But that brownie front was really interesting, and it gets more pronounced. Gets more pronounced with every batch that we put out.
Where do you think that comes from? The brownie part.
I don't know.
The nuttiness I would get from the oak, but
Right.
yeah, that is interesting.
That's a chocolate. Maybe the brownie is the chocolate nut combined.
Yeah.
Right. That's how we experience a brownie.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah, all the way around. Definitely a range and good mouthfeel on each of them, really. Like I said, the rye vodka surprised me because I think that could be drinkable on its own.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, part of what I've learned about tasting whiskeys is that part of the experience of drinking it neat is experiencing that mouthfeel and feeling the heaviness. And I almost look forward to that. Putting an ice cube in to me is like, I'm just killing that whole experience. So, but everybody likes drinking whiskey their own way.
That's
So
right. That's what makes it nice and
yeah,
selective.
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks for letting me share it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you taking us through the range. Thanks.
man.